Every American deserves to know that when they cast their vote, that vote will be counted accurately in a system, and that is to make that system secure, one where cheating and interference are not just difficult, but virtually impossible. Unfortunately, the system we have today falls catastrophically short of that standard. Tonight, I'm announcing the immediate declassification and release of critical intelligence revealing shocking vulnerabilities in our election infrastructure. This evidence shows that the election system we have dangerously exposes and really exposes like levels never thought possible to hacking, exploitation, and foreign interference. Just as disturbingly, this vital information has for many years been covered up and hidden from you, the American people, our beautiful, our great American people. But that all changes right now. The documents...
Make no mistake, what just dropped from that podium in the East Room last night wasn't a speech. It was a major, if not the major, declassification event of our lives. Left-wing activists disguised as journalists in the legacy media are panicking. CNN actually boasted how they refused to air it live, as if anyone still watches CNN. And now we know why. We know why the legacy media refused to air that bombshell last night, precisely because of the multiple bombshells they knew President Trump was going to drop. Bombshells they deliberately have been covering up for the last 6 years. And that's exactly what we are going to expose on this live stream. We got that, and we got Senator John Fetterman. He is lighting a match under his own party, and we're going to see how all of this ties together and what it all tells us about November. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. It is Livestream Friday. I'm your host, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. As always, our super chats are up, so please feel free to send in your comments, your questions. It will be my honor, my privilege to answer them right here on this live stream broadcast. But first, look at what just dropped today. My brand new book, Civcosm, Gods, Algorithms, and the Rise of a Civilizational Cosmocracy. Yes, I have way too much time on my hands. It is officially launched as of today. So if you want to grab your copy, just click the link below or go to civcosm.com. That's CIVCOSM.com. This is the book that really it's the culmination of like my life's work in many respects. It's the book that names like no one else the world we're actually living in. No one else is talking about this. Rush Limbaugh used to say that we are on the cutting edge of societal evolution, and I think Rush would endorse this book as precisely that. That's precisely what this book is about. This book answers the fundamental question: what comes after globalism? What comes after the liberal international order? And how do you find your place in it? Because obviously this could be a very, very confusing world. And this book is there to completely nuke that confusion. So I make the argument that we're witnessing the rise of what I call a civilizational cosmocracy, a new global order no longer built on liberal universalism, but on rising civilization states, each rediscovering their own sacred vision and who they are and where they're going. So this book explores this emerging order through three great theaters of competition. So first, you have the rise of what's called theopolitics, and that's how nations like the United States, Russia, China, India, they're all reasserting themselves, not as neutral liberal administrators, but as full-blooded civilizations, some even rising as what scholars call constitutional theocracies. Then you have technopolitics, how the marriage of technology and populism, what I call technopopulism, is fusing ancient tradition with cutting-edge innovation. So this is a tech-trad alliance. This is archaeofuturism, the vision that our future doesn't require abandoning our past, but building the most advanced civilization the world has ever seen on top of our deepest religious traditions. And then finally, you have the rise of astropolitics, because the same civilizational drive that's reshaping nations on Earth is now reaching for the stars, from Artemis missions to the new space race, revealing that humanity's oldest sacred impulse, the reach for the heavens, is now becoming the newest frontier of civilizational and technological destiny. And thanks to you, we're already seeing incredible early momentum for the book. So today's the day. Get your hands on a copy. It is our official launch day for CivCosm. Get one for yourself. Get one for every civilizational thinker in your life. They're going to love this book. I wrote it with you in mind because I want you to understand not just what is happening in the world right now, but why it's happening and how you can be part of building what comes next. So just click on that link below or go to civcosm.com. That's civcosm.com. All right, let's dive right in here. So last night, President Trump delivered a rare 25-minute primetime address from the White House East Room, only his third of this kind since taking office. And he opened it exactly the way you'd expect a man running on record economic and border numbers would open it. He touted the golden age, lower prices, zero illegal border crossings sustained over the past year, the lowest national murder rate in 125 years, record levels of investment nationally. But then he pivoted, and the tone in the room clearly changed.
These disclosures reveal an election system so broken and so vulnerable that no one can possibly defend it. It is not defensible. Hundreds of millions of U.S. voter files are in the hands of foreign governments. Our machines and ballot counting systems are exposed to hacking and manipulation and corruption. China and other countries have been trying to meddle in our elections. Evidence of fraud has been buried. Hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls, and yet we still have elections with no voter ID, no proof of citizenship, and tens of millions of ballots floating aimlessly through the mail.
Now, that's a very nice summary of Trump's series of bombshells that he delivered last night. So bottom line, Trump revealed that the CIA itself confirmed that voting machines throughout the country are catastrophically insecure. That's not a conspiracy theory anymore. That's the CIA. That's our intelligence agencies. He revealed that China accessed the voter files of 220 million Americans. He revealed that hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are still listed and active on the voter rolls, and that a rogue faction inside our own intelligence community ran what one internal email literally called a shadow government to hide it all from the sitting president, as well as some bombshell revelations coming out of the state of Michigan. President Trump announced the immediate declassification of intelligence covering 4 separate tranches of election vulnerability. It was released simultaneously as the speech on a White House document portal, so everyone can read the underlying material themselves rather than take his word for it. That's actually rather significant and worth pondering here. Whatever you think of the framing, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, releasing the primary documents alongside the speech is a pretty impressive transparency move that most previous administrations would never make. So again, the legacy media can cover their eyes and stick their fingers in their ears all they want. Trump he's not just speeching, he's showing the evidence to the American people so they can see it for themselves. Or another way of saying it, he ain't just preaching, he's practicing. So let's break down. Again, you can go to the website. I think you just put White House election integrity in your Google search, and you'll see these 4 pillars, these 4 tranches of documents. So pillar 1 involves the vulnerabilities in our voting and ballot counting systems. The declassified intelligence community assessment spanning from January 2025 all the way through June of this year, just last month, they state plainly that adversary nations like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea possess the technical capability to compromise American election infrastructure. But the single most alarming document in this entire release involves Venezuela. CIA reporting indicates that Nicolas Maduro's regime specifically plotted to digitally alter U.S. vote totals in a manner that would be undetectable through a standard post-election audit. Now, again, sit with that for a moment. This is not a hypothetical vulnerability. It's an actual documented plot by a hostile foreign government to manipulate our vote count and leave no trace of having done so. So that's the first pillar that the White House dropped. Our intelligence communities, keep in mind, the very intelligence communities that the legacy media has been depending on and touting for the last 5 years as proof that there was absolutely no corruption whatsoever in the 2020 election. Those same agencies have now revealed massive vulnerability in our voting systems. You see, this is why no one takes the legacy media seriously anymore. Democrats do. But the legacy media can't have it both ways. Those very same agencies that the legacy media has fawned over, the same legacy media agencies that the intelligence agencies that the legacy media has affirmed over the last 5 years, have now come out and revealed the very things the legacy media wants to deny. The only reason why they affirm or deny is if it hurts the Republicans and helps the Democrats. That's the standard, not facticity. That's exactly what they did with the Russian collusion hoax. And it's exactly what they did with the Hunter Biden laptop. It's exactly what they did with Elon's supposed Nazi salute. It's all pro-Democrat, anti-Republican propaganda, nothing more. All right, so that's pillar one. Pillar two, China's acquisition and exploitation of American voter data. So this is where the story gets its biggest number here. Documents show that the Chinese Communist Party illicitly acquired the voter files of roughly 220 million Americans beginning in 2020, which is described in the White House's own materials as the largest election data compromise in American history. But buried inside that very same pillar is the part I think that matters even more, because it's not just about an enemy from without, it's about an enemy from within. The documents allege that officials within our own intelligence community knew about the breach, but they actively suppressed it and they downplayed the true scope of China's meddling, even keeping the full picture from both the American public and reportedly from President Trump himself. Now, if that holds up, this is not just foreign interference anymore. This is not just a foreign interference story. It's a domestic accountability story about who inside our own government decided that the president didn't need to know about foreign influence. It's both foreign and domestic interference that work together to compromise the integrity of the 2020 election. Pretty explosive stuff. Pillar three is the Michigan investigation. So this, what I like about his presentation last night is he had these big macro pictures, but then he focused in micro here. Again, there were reports that he was going to talk about Georgia, but it turns out it is Michigan. The declassified FBI files reference a 2020 raid by Michigan State Police on a Democrat-aligned canvassing operation in the city of Muskegon. Now, according to the documents, the canvassers involved admitted to forging voter registrations and fabricating non-existent voters, allegedly in exchange for gift cards. Again, you can't make this stuff up. The White House's materials state that this investigation was deliberately slow-walked for years by the Biden Justice Department rather than pursued to its conclusion. So here we have an actual example of voter fraud happening in Michigan in 2020. And then the fourth pillar involves the shocking amount of non-citizens on state voter rolls, even as we speak. So the Department of Homeland Security identified approximately 278,000 non-citizens registered to vote in federal elections. And critically, the White House notes that this figure is almost certainly an undercount because several Democrat-run states have refused to hand over their complete voter files for federal cross-referencing against citizenship records. Ask yourself why a state government would decline that request if it had nothing to hide. And so in sum, the four tranches of evidence reveal that voting machines throughout the country are catastrophically compromised or insecure, that China accessed the voter files of 220 million Americans, and that a rogue faction inside our own intelligence community ran what one internal email literally called a shadow government to hide all of it from the sitting president. 3, that the state of Michigan in particular was caught in voter registration fraud. And then 4, hundreds of thousands of non-citizens and dead people are listed and active on the voter rolls. And so, of course, President Trump summed up these findings with a passionate appeal to voters all across America to do precisely this.
To all Americans, I ask you to pick up your phone tomorrow, call your representatives in the House and Senate, and demand that they pass the Save America Act without delay. Together, we will restore faith and confidence in our country, and we will be bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our great military. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
So that's what the speech was ultimately all about. Obviously, there was a lot of conjecture about what President Trump would be doing last night. We reported on reports that he would actually be flanked by CIA Director John Ratcliffe and the acting director of National Intelligence, Bill Pulte, Mark Wayne Mullen of Homeland Security, Kash Patel, the FBI. I do think that would have been super cool, visually speaking, but it was hardly necessary. I mean, he obviously made his 4 points very clearly. And I do have to admit, I was somewhat disappointed because there were reports that Trump was just going to say a pox on both Congress and the courts. I'm just going to make a national security emergency declaration, right? We talked about that the other day. The reason why I was hoping for that is because a national security emergency declaration is virtually immune from both the courts and Congress. The courts can easily strike down, say an EO, an executive order. But they can't easily strike down a national security declaration any more than they can stop Trump from going to war. A national security emergency declaration is a completely different vehicle from just simply an EO. The Supreme Court ruled back in 1983 that a national security emergency can only be overturned by Congress, and that's a 2/3 vote in both houses of Congress. Good luck with that, right? So the Senate filibuster can't touch an national security emergency declaration. The parliamentarian can't rule it out of order. And Trump has already used it. There's some precedent here. He used it back in 2019 to build the border wall when Congress refused to fund it. And it worked, right? So frankly, I got to admit, I was hoping for that. I was hoping for Trump to just give a big middle finger to both the courts and Congress and just completely bypass all that nonsense with a national security emergency declaration. But we did note in our reporting that if Trump stopped shy of formally declaring a national security emergency, then what he will do is he will provide the momentum that the SAVE Act needs to now pass the Senate with a simple majority and overcome any objections from either the rhinos or from the parliamentarian who may try to stop that. The parliamentarian could be totally ignored. In fact, Thune could fire her, as I understand it. But Trump would be, we noted Trump would be giving otherwise weak-kneed Republican senators at least the cover they needed to override the parliamentarian in the event that she tries to overrule the inclusion of the SAVE Act in the latest national security appropriations bill. And with Susan Collins on board, with Congress, with the House passing a national security appropriations bill with the Save America Act attached to it, the Senate now has the opportunity to pass it with a simple majority, with J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. I do think that's what Trump effectively did last night, and I'll develop that more as we go on here. Trump reframed the SAVE Act by yoking it to foreign espionage rather than domestic voter ID debates, as important as they are. But by opening with China's theft of 220 million voter files, by getting into Venezuela's undetectable vote manipulation plot, by getting into a deliberate intelligence cover-up, he shifted the bill's justification from preventing individual fraud to actually blocking hostile foreign and domestic state actors. So he explicitly labeled it a national security threat rather than an election threat, right? By stating China orchestrated the largest compromise of election data in history. And then he pivoted directly into demanding the SAVE Act as the fix. So by pairing voter ID and citizenship proof with foreign adversary intelligence, I think he made a very persuasive case that the continued Democrat and Rhino opposition to the SAVE Act is nothing less now than enabling foreign interference rather than just defending voting access and the like. So I think he effectively reframed a contentious election law fight into a defense of national sovereignty and security. Now, again, I want to reiterate here, because I know there's a lot of discussion here. Sorry, as I'm looking into the camera, I can't necessarily see what the comments are, but I'm sure you guys have been talking about it. Certainly X has been talking about it. Do not fool yourself. I know you don't. I just think we need to hear it. There was absolutely nothing that Trump could say last night that would in any way, shape, or form cause the legacy media to have a change of heart or do an about face. The legacy media would need a soul to do that. And that soul has been compromised years ago. The legacy media did not report the 2020 outcome. The legacy media enforced it. I want you to write that down. If you're ever going to talk with people on the fence and so forth, because the legitimacy of the legacy media, trust and confidence in legacy media has never been lower than it is right now, ever in our nation's history, since at least it came to fore in the mid-19th century. The legacy media did not report the 2020 outcome. They enforced it. That's what's so key to the legacy media's downfall. Their complete and total collapse as a legitimate institution. They didn't report 2020 as much as they enforced it. They provided the supposed legitimation and the narrative of Biden's win as settled orthodoxy, treating 2020 as the most pristine, secure election in the history of humanity as an unquestioned fact, rather than one assessment among others. I mean, they did the same thing with COVID and Fauci and the like. There were numerous contrasting opinions that were perfectly valid, as it turns out. We knew it at the time. But that were nevertheless marginalized or covered up or mocked and ridiculed as kooky and fringe by a legacy media that has repeatedly demonstrated a propensity to frame the news in such a way that benefits Democrats and tries to cripple Republicans. There was not a shred of valid evidence for the whole Russian collusion fiasco. It was a lie from beginning to end, as even bumbling Bob Mueller had to admit. All the while, there was a preponderance of evidence that the Hunter Biden laptop was genuine and authentic. And how did the legacy media cover both of those stories? In lockstep, may I add. It didn't matter if you were in CBS, NBC, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC. It didn't matter. How did they report those two events? They did so, again, in lockstep, in such a way that deliberately benefited the Democrats and intentionally tried to hurt Trump and the Republicans. And they did the exact same thing with the 2020 election. And you'll notice the ridiculous hypocrisy in all this. Again, I pointed it out earlier. The very intelligence communities, like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the very intelligence agencies that they uncritically touted to defend their assessment of the legitimacy of that election, are now calling that legitimacy into question. And how is the legacy media responding? They're dismissing it. They're dismissing it. The very institutions that we were told were beyond reproach back in 2020 are now being dismissed as compromised. I mean, you can't make this hypocrisy up. The legacy media doesn't report, it enforces. And that's why trust in their credibility is at its lowest level ever. Ever. And that's what's so key here. We don't need them. People were freaking out about CNN and ABC and NBC all refusing to carry Trump's speech as if anyone watches them. Who the hell cares what these Jurassic outlets decide to air? Nobody watches. And I'm not being hyperbolic. Let me show you. In the 1960s, 50 million people on average got their news from the big three networks. Cronkite alone could pull in half of that. Sometimes he could pull in 30 million. Now, that 50 million is when our nation had a population of around 200 million. So that's 25% of the country getting its news from the televised legacy media, ABC, CBS, NBC. Today, our country is over 350 million. And when you combine all the networks and all the cable news outlets, combine them all, the total viewership barely hits 20 million. And if you do your math, that's less than 5% of our population. And the audience is overwhelmingly Democrat. Today, all the network and cable news outlets combined don't get the audience that Walter Cronkite alone was able to get on a nightly manner. So they're irrelevant. And I want to show you what Trump really did accomplish last night. And we're going to do it by way of one senator that is absolutely causing heartburn and panic among Democratic operatives. Yep, we've got a major Democrat senator ready to jump ship. He's openly stating it. And I want to show you exactly how that relates to what Trump did last night. You're going to absolutely love this. But first, if you are just joining us, welcome. Our super chats are up, so feel free to send in your comments and your questions. And it'll be my honor to answer them before we wrap up here. Also, one last shameless plug here. This just went live today. My brand new book, Civcosm, Gods, Algorithms, and the Rise of a Civilizational Cosmocracy. It's officially out as of this morning, today. So grab your copy. Just click the link below or head on over to civcosm.com. That's CIVCOSM.com. It's short for Civilizational Cosmocracy. This is the book that puts a name to the world that we're actually seeing rise before our eyes. And nobody else out there is even attempting this conversation. So again, like what Rush Limbaugh used to say, with this book, you are truly going to be on the cutting edge of societal evolution. It tackles the question everyone senses but can't quite articulate. What precisely replaces the old globalist liberal international order as it dies, which it is doing? And where do you fit inside that worldwide movement? Because again, let's be honest, and I hear from you all the time. I know the world feels pretty chaotic right now. This book exists to cut through that fog. So my core argument is that we're watching the birth of what I call a civilizational cosmocracy. It's a global order that's no longer anchored in liberal universalism, but now in resurgent civilization states, with each one reclaiming its own sacred sense of identity and destiny that's even now reaching toward the stars. So the book maps this new order across three great arenas of competition. So first, what I call theopolitics. That's the story of how religion is now making a comeback in geopolitics. So nations like America, Russia, China, India, they're all stepping back onto the world stage, not as bland liberal bureaucracies, but as full-blooded civilizations, some hardening into what scholars are now calling constitutional theocracies and civilization states. Then the second section deals with technopolitics, and that's the fusion of technology and tradition in what I call technopopulism, where cutting-edge innovation and ancient tradition are merging together rather than colliding. So this is a tech-trad alliance. This is archaeofuturism, the conviction that tomorrow's civilization gets built on top of yesterday's deepest religious roots, not by bulldozing them, but by building on them. And then the third level here is astropolitics, because that very same civilizational energy reshaping nations with this burgeoning technology is now pushing outward beyond Earth toward the stars, from Artemis missions to the new space race between China and the United States and India. And it's proving that humanity's oldest sacred longing, the reach toward the heavens, has now become civilization's newest frontier, precisely because religion and technology are coming together. Just ask Elon Musk. It's really fascinating stuff. And he features very prominently in this book. So it's all thanks to you. The early response has already been incredible. So grab your copy today. You're never going to read a book quite like this. Today marks CivCosm's official launch. Get one for yourself and one for every civilizational thinker you know. They'll love it. I wrote this book specifically with you guys in mind because I want you to grasp not just what's unfolding across the globe, but why it's happening and how you can help shape whatever comes next. So just click the link below or go to civcosm.com. That's civcosm.com. Let's make CivCosm the new word du jour, shall we say. All right. Just hours before Trump's speech even aired, some huge news broke that tells you everything you need to know about the state of the Democrat Party heading into 2026. Senator John Fetterman, from my own backyard in Pennsylvania, has come out and declared he is indeed going to leave the Democrat Party the moment it officially becomes the anti-Israel party, calling it his personal non-negotiable red line. It's the first time that Fetterman has affirmed that he is indeed seriously considering leaving the party. Now, this didn't come out of nowhere. It came just one day after over 100 House Democrats voted for a Thomas Massie-sponsored measure to block $3.3 billion in aid to Israel. Now, that's nearly half the entire House Democratic caucus. And keep in mind, the issue isn't whether blocking that money is a good thing or a bad thing. That's actually a whole separate debate. The issue is the political realignment within the Democrat Party, which used to be staunchly pro-Israel, given that the vast majority of Jews in America are Democrats, and how that realignment is now redefining party loyalties among some of their politicians. And Fetterman is watching his own party's center of gravity shift on Israel in real time. And he is, for the very first time, drawing a red line in the sand publicly, saying that that would indeed be the catalyst for him to leave the Democrat Party. And Fetterman didn't stop there. He floated an even sharper piece of political math. This is fascinating. He said that if Democrats manage to flip 4 Senate seats in the midterms and reach a near 51-seat majority, he said, watch what I do. He is literally threatening the Democrats. Guess what, guys? If you're like at 50-50, or even if you're at 51-49, guess what? I'll switch. And I'll make it 50-50, and JD will be the tiebreaker. That was a not so subtle signal that his own leverage and his own willingness to break ranks entirely only grows from here. It does not shrink. He's literally holding the Democrats hostage to the midterms. Now, of course, Fetterman's already infuriated the progressive wing by his vociferous opposition to former Senate candidate Graham Plattner in Maine. He consistently refers to him as the accused rapist and the guy with the Nazi tattoo, even after Plattner's campaign imploded. I mean, he has no problem kicking a man while he's down. And Fetterman's also publicly demanded that Bernie Sanders apologize for ever backing him. He actually excoriates the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. And then he did the unthinkable. He actually formed, you probably heard about this, he formed a rather unusual bipartisan fundraising committee with his fellow Pennsylvania Republican Senator Dave McCormick. Now, that obviously fueled ongoing speculation about a party switch coming in the very near future, certainly before 2028. I would argue that that switch is inevitable. A new Quinnipiac poll shows barely 19% approval for Fetterman among Pennsylvania Democrats. 19%. A super majority believe he should leave. They should knock him out of the party. And Democrat Representative Brendan Boyle has publicly said Fetterman needs to go, branding him outright as Trump's favorite Democrat. At the very same time, a vast majority of Pennsylvania Republicans, actually a supermajority, love him. So you don't have to be a genius to figure out, given that he's up for re-election in 2028, you don't have to be a genius to figure out where this is going to go. But the key here is that this Fetterman threat is but the latest chapter in the catastrophic civil war that's breaking the Democrat Party apart. It's a civil war between the more old-time establishment Democrats versus the rise of the radical Mamdani Marxist progressives that we see in the form of Plattner and Sanders and AOC. And all you got to do is listen to Democrat strategist James Carville, Louisiana, James Carville, the man who built Bill Clinton's 1992 presidential victory, the architect of modern Democrat politics. He is openly stating that if the Democrats go the way of the progressive Marxists, it will cease to be a viable national party, as it ought. Carville is openly stating this. He thinks that if the party goes the way of the Mamdanis and the AOCs and the Rashida Tlaibs and the Ilhan Omars, it should implode. It should fall apart. He, like Fetterman, doesn't want to have anything to do with this new radical far-left cultural Marxist third worldist movement that's taking over the Democrat Party in so many American cities as we speak. The Guardian actually reported that the party's old guard, again, like people like Bill Maher and like Carville himself, they're abandoning the, quote, blue no matter who banner, and they're pushing for a more formal break with their progressive wing. Carville has since escalated things even further. He's warning that the socialist victories may signal the end of the two-party system. He said he cannot see a future where two parties dominate American politics the way they have for the past century if these progressive Marxists, third worldists, end up taking over the Democrat Party, meaning that it's the Democrats who are going to split. It's the Democrats who will be consigned to a permanent minority status. Now, again, if you've been with this channel for a while now, and if not, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. But if you've been with us for a while, you know that we've talked often about the deleterious political effects of woke cultural Marxist movements and politicians on the Democrat Party itself. The radical communist politics actually splits the left. So if you ask, again, we talk about this all the time, if you ask a group of leftists, do you support Mamdani? Do you support, BLM? Do you support the Democrat Socialists? Do you support trans athletes in women's sports? Take whatever woke issue, politician, movement, whatever. When you ask the left, do you support this? Half the left will say, yeah, man, I'm all for it. You bet. And you're a racist if you don't, blah, blah, blah. But the other half, the Bill Maher half, the James Carville half, They're going to say, heck no. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Keep in mind, remember, Elon Musk voted for Biden in 2020. He was a Democrat. He was part of this wing that ended up getting excommunicated by the progressive Marxists. So what we have to understand is that the woke left actually splits the left, but that's just half of the equation. Because while cultural Marxist wokeness is splitting the left, at the same time, what is it doing for the right? If you ask anyone on the right, do they support Mamdani and Plattner and AOC and any woke issue and BLM? What are they going to say? Absolutely not. And how many on the right are going to say that? It's virtually 100%. So that's the political suicide that the socialist Democrats, the cultural Marxists, are playing out here. They are splitting the left and uniting the right. In other words, they are guaranteeing a political environment where more people will always come out and vote against them than vote for them, for the exception of these enclaves, these urban enclaves. But even there, we're seeing it. So Seattle's Marxist mayor, what's her name? Katie, I'm forgetting, Crazy Katie, I call her. Crazy Katie won her election by less than 1% of the vote in a place where a Republican's not even running. It's just two Democrats. But it split the left 50-50, basically, and she just came out a little bit on top. Same with Mamdani. Mamdani had a very, very small margin of victory. And so now to bring this full circle with what Trump did last night, at the rise of anti-Israel Marxism is splitting the Democrat Party, as evidenced of late by John Fetterman's threats to leave the party. If that's the case, if that's progressive Marxism is splitting the Democrats, what's the fight for election integrity doing for the Republicans? Every single poll out there shows that nothing unites the Republican Party more than a fight for election integrity. The vast majority of Republicans believe 2020 was stolen. Right or wrong, that's just, I'm being descriptive, not prescriptive. And they want that rectified. They want justice. They never want that to happen again. And so what Trump really did last night, whether the legacy media likes it or not, as much as they close their eyes and plug their ears, it doesn't matter. What he really did last night is he provided the evidence needed to get the SAVE Act over the finish line, precisely because of how he brought the entire party together, at least when it comes to the rank and file. Yes, you're going to still have your Lisa Murkowski's and your Tom Tillis's. They're irrelevant. They're gone. Tillis is gone as of January of next year, and Lisa Murkowski will be gone in 28. But what Trump did besides that is he unified Republicans, particularly the rank and file, all the while the Democrats are fracturing more and more every single day. That's the real magic of what happened last night. That's the real achievement. That's what made that address to the nation so important. Trump's speech didn't just expose alleged vulnerabilities in America's voting infrastructure. It exposed, almost as a side effect, the discipline gap between the two parties heading into the most consequential midterm election cycle in a generation. One side is organized and united around a shared cause. The other side is fracturing from the inside out in full public view, with its own members using words like traitor against each other. And that contrast, more than any single declassified document, more than any single cable news meltdown, may end up being the real lasting story of this entire week. Over to you guys. Over to you. Our super chats are up. Fire away with your questions, your comments. I'll be happy to answer them right here on this live stream broadcast. Also, let me ask you something. Have you noticed that no matter how hard you work, it feels like your money just doesn't go as far as it used to, right? We keep hearing politicians in Washington argue over spending, but the truth is The national debt is quietly acting like a hidden tax on every single paycheck you earn. And every time the elites print more money to fund their agendas, the dollars in your wallet and your retirement account lose their power. For years, the establishment told us to trust the system, right? Work hard, save your money, and everything will be fine. But what happens when the very people running the system are the ones inflating your wealth away? That's how they keep you dependent. They control the currency, so they control your future. But what if you didn't have to stay trapped in their system? And what if you were just one trade plan away from a more independent financial future? Well, that's the message inside the name Backpack Trader. It's not about Wall Street. It's not about staring at screens all day long. It's about learning a simple plan that you can carry with you, a skill the elites can't inflate away, a plan that can help you build confidence and real choices from wherever you are. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Steve, trading, isn't that risky? And I understand that because I was skeptical too, which is why I trust so much my good friend, Troy Noonan, the Backpack Trader. Troy has spent 35 years perfecting a step-by-step approach for everyday people like you and me. And I know it works because I'm actually a member of his program. I've seen it firsthand. Here's what makes Troy different. He shows you how to prove the plan before you risk a single penny of your hard-earned money in the markets. It's amazing stuff. So go to backpacktrader.com/turleyfreedom right now because Troy's hosting a free live training called Backpack Trader Live on Wednesday, July 22nd, 7 p.m. Eastern. And when you register, he's going to send you his 12 Powers to Successful Trading ebook. And when you show up live, you'll actually unlock the private replay of our Turley Roundtable with Troy, me, and real Backpack Trader Patriots. So you're going to get a firsthand look at this stuff. It's amazing. Go to backpacktrader.com/turleyfreedom and reserve your spot. All right, Josh, what do we got? It's rock and roll. Rebel Squirrel, good to hear from you, my friend. Shout out to my old hometown, Harlingen, I think, Texas, where the local ICE office rounded up 250 plus dangerous criminal illegals in the Rio Grande Valley in a single day. That's how you turn a once deep blue region GOP in just 10 years. Amen to that. Is that in the Rio Grande area? I don't know where Harlingen is. Let me just look that up. But that is awesome. Great shout out, Rebel Squirrel. And it's true. The numbers for deportation are pretty stunning when you look at what the what Homeland Security is talking about. So again, we're up at about 700,000 for exactly this forced deportations, but it doesn't compare to the well over 2 million now self deportations that we know through the app. They register through the app. And of course we have their geolocation and the like. So right now we're looking at about, as I understand, just over 3 million deportations. And I mean, when you compare that to how the Democrats had depended on those inflated numbers of non-citizens voting that we heard about, the 250,000, and again, it's going to be a lot more than that. But now that doesn't matter if they're getting deported, right? So, and this is pretty astonishing stuff that's happening here. The deportation of illegals and election integrity are inextricably linked together. And the more illegals that are deported, the less Democrats are going to be able to engage in their shenanigans, shall we say. Johnny the Whiz Kid, what's really raising the gas price? Because now Trump says the oil companies ought to be investigated. I thought it was the Keystone Pipeline and now the Iran war. I really don't know what to believe. Yeah, so that's a good question. So the gas prices are based on oil, per barrel oil prices. And per barrel oil prices are priced internationally. So it's not going to be just one thing. It's going to be numerous things. And they tend to be futures as well. And futures are investors predicting what the market is going to be doing in the next days, in the next weeks, and the like. So if there's any kind of volatility in the world that they believe is going to affect the price, then they're going to be bulls on it, and they're going to think the price is going to go up, and they're going to invest in that, and the price inevitably does go up. Or if the volatility goes off, they'll be bearish, and they'll start shorting the market, and the price will be going down. Trump is just making it clear that to his supporters, to American people, that he's got his eye on the market, and he expects, given the flood of oil and the rerouting of the oil international infrastructure, he is expecting those prices to go down. He's expecting futures investors to be shorting the market. He wants to see that market going down. But in the end, it's not one thing or the other. It's often a bunch of things. Obviously, the Strait of Hormuz was a huge factor, since 20% of oil comes through there. But I'd be curious if that's still the case. I don't know if that's still 20% with the drill baby drill and the WTI West Texas now being so active on the international market. But again, they still have to revamp, and time has to pass for the restructuring of their the tracks that they take, the oil super tankers take around the world. So if you figured in about 3 weeks you would get a shipment from Hormuz, and then you had to redirect your tanker, say, to Texas, maybe now it's 5 weeks. So that's all of that's playing itself out. But this is all part, in the end, of realigning the world's oil networks around the United States as its center. That's what Trump wants. Will O'Toole, good AM, Dr. Steve. Although I appreciated the speech last night, I think it was falling on deaf ears of the collective public, especially with the compromised network showing no interest to broadcast. Thus, there must be a rest for the public to understand the gravity of the situation. Your thoughts, please. No, that's good. I hear you, Will. I do think you're that's why I wrote my book, Civ Calls. I'm got to throw that in, right? I think you're still living a little bit in the past there. Nobody cares what the legacy media says. Nobody. When I say nobody, I mean outside of the already convinced boomers that have been voting Democrat their whole lives, that are pro-establishment, pro-liberal international system, and the hardcore leftists. Even hardcore leftists don't, CNN is, and even MSNBC are not left enough for them. So networks don't have to show. Less than 5% of the population gets their news from the networks. What happened last night is Trump galvanized the base. That's what he did. And a galvanized base stands in radical contrast to the fracturing Democrat Party as we speak, that's going through a civil war. And that's how you have to understand what he did last night. It's not so much convincing the world sort of stuff. He did shock the world. I think there are a lot of people who did not know this stuff who were pretty blown away by what he said. But the bottom line for Trump was to reinvigorate the unity of the Republican Party against the establishment, in contrast to the continued fracturing of the Democrat Party, as evidenced by the latest threat by Fetterman. Richard, Dr. Steve, Trump said last night the media was complicit in the 2020 cover-up. Your thoughts? Absolutely they were. Again, like I said, they did not report, they enforced. This is what you're never going to get. So going back to Will's comment, you're never going to get the legacy media to admit what happened in 2020 because they were part of it. They played just as they played a very important role with the Russian collusion. I think they were frankly shocked at what Bob Mueller did. I think they were stunned that he didn't charge Trump. As special prosecutor, that he would recommend charges. I think they were stunned by that because I think they felt they did everything they were supposed to do to push this Hillary Clinton originated lie from the fake fraud Steele dossier Um, and it all fell apart. It all dissipated. And then you'll notice they just went as if nothing happened, and then just found some other controversy to latch onto and enforce. And part of that enforcement is the deliberate disenfranchisement. It's the deliberate marginalization, the peripheralization of any alternative view. Now, in a democracy, you're supposed to have, certainly in a courtroom, you're supposed to have both views equally weighted. Well, the media has been very open that they don't do that anymore. Those days are over. Well, that's good because their credibility, the days of their credibility and trust are over. So, yeah, I would say do not hold your breath waiting for the legacy media to report accurately anything Trump says, generally speaking, but most especially the issue of 2020 election, given their role in enforcing it. Well, you were mentioned in an American Thinker essay recently. Your influence is growing exponentially. Congrats. Well, thank you, Will. I'll have to check that out. Very good. I'll make a note of that. I always like seeing myself. Well, not always. Sometimes it could be not very complimentary. But yeah, no, it's great. Thank you, Will. That's awesome. And I like AT. AT's great site. MAGA 20 forever. With or without the passage of the SAVE Act, do the revealed findings in Trump's declaration of a national emergency over election security give the feds ability to electronically monitor voting machines and post-security personnel in problematic counties voting counting? Yeah, I do. I think so. I think the dirty little secret here, and we did a video on this, is Trump is already doing a lot right now. What was that organization called? The election accountability commission or something like that, EAC. He fired everyone on there, a bunch of rhino Republicans and liberal Democrats on there, fired them all, got rid of them. And now he basically has control over that agency. And they are the ones who are responsible more or less for the architecture and the mechanics of national elections. We've got the EO in place that is putting strict limitations for mail order ballots. We've got as well the post office putting on barcodes on all mail-in ballots that can be tracked and traced through a whole chain of custody procedure that was completely jettisoned in 2020. There was no chain of custody whatsoever. Continues to be none in at least local and state elections in California. That's why it takes so long to count everything up. And a number of other things. No, he's done a lot. No one is more concerned about election integrity than Trump. No one. So he's done a tremendous amount by himself, but he wants law in place so as to secure this legacy of election integrity way beyond himself. And he wants that law to equally apply to all 50 states, so as to bring these 13 to 17 pathetic blue states into compliance with just some basic measures, basic thresholds of election integrity, like citizenship verification and voter ID. So, in human condition, love that tag. Zero accountability, emboldened actions. That's a great way of putting it. I like that. Hey, I mean, that's a bumper sticker right there. Zero accountability equals emboldened actions. Commies are never held accountable. Never. Careful. Don't say never. No faith can be restored until we see laws upheld. Thus far, commies are above the law. Yes. Okay. So commies have infiltrated the establishment, and the establishment is and people are attracted to becoming members of the establishment, the elite, the political economic elite, precisely because you are not held accountable. That's one of the perks of being a member of the establishment. C.S. Lewis wrote about this going all the way back to the 1940s. So you're right in that sense, to the extent that they are able to penetrate the establishment, they generally are above and beyond being held legally accountable to the very same laws that we're all under. Again, this is the standard Politburo playbook. You pass laws that the entire citizenry is under, but that you are immune to, that you stand above, that you transcend. That said, Mamdani tried to meet with the permanent diplomat to the UN from Iran, and he was shut down hard. He tried to do the same thing with the previous Colombian president, the Marxist there, and he was shut down hard on that again by the State Department. So they will clamp down on state and local commies. They will do that. There have been plenty of Antifa convictions of actually terrorist activity. The one in Texas of late. You don't get more commie than that, and they're getting held accountable. So I get your frustration, and it is a perfectly valid and real frustration given the structure of the establishment. But we also have enough good guys in the establishment who are cracking down on commies at the state and local level. The federal level, it's harder because that's, again, the attraction is you if you can get there. The common code is you don't hold anyone accountable. So that's why it's been so hard to see anyone brought to accountability, let alone commies, just anyone. Bert, morning, Dr. Steve. What do you think the chance of the Republicans keeping the Congress? I think it's 50-50. Well, so if you're talking about the Senate, it's almost guaranteed because the math just isn't there for the Democrats. Democrats are trying to hold on to 11 seats that are facing retirements. So one's in Michigan, another one's in New Hampshire, and those are both looking actually very good for the GOP. But in the other states, Texas, there's no chance. Ohio, there's no chance. Those are solid red. So there aren't going to be really any flips. The only one we're definitely concerned about is North Carolina, with Mike Whatley running behind their most favored governor, who hopefully they're going to be able to beat up as just a lackey for Chuck Schumer. But so the numbers, worst case scenarios could be 50-50 with a JD tiebreak. So they're not going to be able to do the Senate. As far as the House is concerned, the redistricting has worked very, very well. We've got the three major projection models. So Crystal Ball, Cook Political Report, and Inside Elections. They're all giving the Republicans right now the lead. They're at 212, 214, 211. You need 218 seats in Congress. And Democrats are behind. That was not the case if you compare that with 2018, last time you had a Republican midterm with a Republican administration. That was not the case. Democrats were way ahead. They're just simply not. And so there's very few, a dozen plus toss-up seats. And the Democrats did not win all toss-up seats in 2018 when they won 40 seats. Republicans were able to peel off several of those seats. So they're not going to win. Again, if passes precedent, they're not going to win all of the toss-up seats. And the Republicans really only need 4 or 5. That's it. And then you compare the war chest. Republicans are outraising Democrats 7-1. With Trump in there, they have $1 billion war chest that Democrats simply don't have. USAID is no longer there to bail them out. And then when you look at the generic ballot, I mean, it's relatively close. It's within single digits. Again, it's nothing like the Democrats' lead that they had this time in 2018. So I think the Republicans have a very good chance of holding the House. Again, I'd say 50-50 just because in the end, it is almost always the case over the last 100 years that the party in power loses seats. It's almost always the case. There were 3 exceptions, 1934, 1998, and 2002. And hopefully we'll see a new exception a fourth exception in 2026. That's what we're cheering for. So we all need to get out there. We all need to vote. But right now things look very good. It's just, yeah, I mean, that historical precedent is a strong one. Carter Benson, the poor Democrats and their lackeys in the mainstream media, they thought censor Trump's speech, and it backfires in their face. I agree 1,000%. If anything, it only serves to further unite the GOP. That's what you have to get. And that's what we need going into the midterms. We need to be united while the Democrats are divided. And if that's the case, it could be very hard for Democrats to pull off wins. Again, they'll pull off wins in their Washington, Oregon, Illinois, New York, all that, California, and all that nonsense. But in the wider electoral map, they're going to get their asses handed to them if they go in divided and we go in united. Gremlin Anku, you know how you could fix the voting machines problem? Make all the ones that states use now illegal and have Musk invent new ones. The Democrats will go to paper ballots and hand counting in no time. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, again, how that can be enforced is hard because our elections are so state-centric given our federal system. So it's very hard for the federal government to force compliance among states on specifically how they carry out the election, what electronics they can use. But again, Trump is doing an excellent job of redefining election integrity as a national security issue as over and against just simply an election issue. Rock Dog, the Barbarian, Dr. Steve. So last night we learned that China committed an act of war by meddling in elections, and the deep state and the Democrat plantation committed treason. Great. So when do we see the arrest of these bureaucrats and demo rats? How is this going to affect the midterms? Well, so my argument is it affects the midterms by uniting the Republicans, all the while the Democrats are disunited as they're fracturing. That's nothing unites our party more than election integrity issues. Nothing. So that's the good news. Again, I think there's a bit of, I won't even say there's fracturing with the Senate and with Thune. There's definite disappointment, but there was total 100% unification around Trump and his call for election integrity. And to his credit, Mike Johnson's been doing a great job in the House. Third time they passed it in the House, the SAVE Act, with very small margins. Technically, percentage-wise, it's even smaller margins than the Senate. But the House is more populous. The Senate is more House of Lords, aloof establishment and the like. So that's how it's going to affect the midterms. We're going in more united while the Democrats are going in divided. Yeah, the arrests, we'll have to see. That's, again, what I was hoping for last night was a declaration of national security emergency. And that would start giving the president some wartime powers where he can bypass both court and Congress and really start showing the power of the executive branch, which the DOJ is under. But it's hard. It's hard, Rock Dog. We talked about this. It's hard with the establishment. The establishment is the establishment by definition, meaning by definition, the fact that they are above the law. It sucks, I know, but that's just the way it is. So by definition, that means we want the right people in there to have an aristopopulist structure where our aristocrats, the elites, are there to actually use their power and influence to enact the values and concerns of the people rather than to disdain and try to actually quell and suppress our values, interests, and concerns in favor of their own globalist liberal ones. So I don't know where we're going to see arrests. We'll have to keep our eye on what takes place in Michigan or what's happened thus far in Michigan. Again, the arrests are generally speaking at state and local levels, like what we've been seeing with Minneapolis. So far, 70 people have been either indicted or convicted of fraud. So that's good stuff. I hear you, though, that there's a lot of frustration where it just appears that if you're in the federal government, unless you're John Bolton, you're just immune from being held accountable. And that is a very real concern. No question about it. A417C, showing out for the midterms is showing up for the midterms is essential. Do not let the enemy take power. They would destroy our great nation. Evil only prevails if good does nothing. Amen. Amen. I love the anime tag or the thumbnail you got there. Glorious. Joan Hampton, you reported in a post that 11 Democrat senators are retiring. Those seats are vulnerable to being flipped to Republican. Who are the 11 senators? Let me get that for you, Joan. Yeah. All right. So we've got, I would just like the Democrats. Don't give me everybody. Oh, this is back with 9 senators. Come on, 11 senators. Let's go. Let me see. Let me go to Trusty AI. That'll give it to us. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Yeah, I'd be curious to how many more you think might be legitimate candidates for the figure that refers to the total across both parties. Oh, so I screwed that up. Not Democrats alone. I don't find a list of 11. So we got Dick Durbin of Illinois, Gary Peters of Michigan, Tina Smith of Minnesota, Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire, Michael Bennett of Colorado, and Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. So that's 6. If you're thinking the broader number 11, that includes House members or specific lists you saw. Okay. Yeah. So in the research I was doing, I came across 11, but in this AI, it's actually saying it's more like 6 altogether. So good. Thank you for fact checking me. We always have to fact check each other here. We're really looking at Michigan and New Hampshire. Some are looking at Minnesota. I don't know. Minnesota's always disappointing, though. Minnesota does vote right of New Jersey. So we'll have to see. Forget Colorado. Colorado's just pot smoking idiots at this point. So actually there's two senators in Minnesota because Amy Klobuchar, I think, is running for governor now that Tim Walz was kicked out. So there you go. Franz, Dr. Z, congrats on your book. Did you catch General Blaine Holt talking about how Gitmo has been remodeled? No, I will have to check that out. Blaine Holt. That'd be cool. Gitmo remodeled. Are you saying they're preparing for a new clientele? Maybe from DC? Who knows? Deborah, sorry to be late. May have already addressed this. Why was last night's speech so low key, so little information? Well, I thought he gave a lot, but a lot of it is classified. So he could only give what is declassified because, again, you are dealing with national security issues. But I think he focused on four areas that were pretty important in terms of China's role, in terms of the lack of, in securing information over 200 million registered voters. That's pretty insane. Because we don't even have 200 million voting in an actual presidential election. The focus on Michigan, the focus on the China, or the focus on the shadow government within our own deep state, the focus on the lack of security in our electronic voting. I mean, it was pretty good. The bottom line, what Trump needed to do is 2 things. He needed to realign our thinking about election security away from simply voting concerns to national security concerns, which I think he did with China and Venezuela and with the CIA. And at the same time, he needed to unite the party as over against the fracturing of the Democrats. And I thought he did both of that. Deborah, so will SAVE Act finally pass the Senate? Is there enough time to enforce it for midterm? Yes, there'd be enough time to enforce it in the midterm. So yes, we're gonna have to see. As I understand it, the SAVE Act has 50 votes with Susan Collins on. The question is whether she and the 50 who voted for it are going to stay united. This is part of what Trump is trying to do, to pass the appropriations bill, the National Security Appropriations Bill that was just passed in the House that has the SAVE Act connected to it. What happens is it gets attached to an appropriations bill that goes through reconciliation. So it only needs 50% plus one in terms of its passing. It can bypass the 60% needed, the filibuster, and 60 votes in that sense. And what happens is if the parliamentarian says, oh, no, you're not allowed to put that on there, it's not a direct budget issue, then you get these washy rhinos go, oh, well, I can't vote for it then. I can't vote for this package, or you have to remove the Save America Act before I can vote for this package. So Trump is trying to get Thune to get these wobbly rhinos to play hardball, and we'll see if Thune is successful. DDH Junk Haulers, please help me understand what is a Senate parliamentarian and where in America did we vote for this version? We didn't. Very, very good, DDH. So a parliamentarian is one who looks at the bills and supposedly provides he or she acts as a kind of referee for whether or not the bill passes muster for reconciliation. So reconciliation, I forget when reconciliation came in. I know it was in the 1970s that you had what's called an informal filibuster come in, where you don't actually have to talk nonstop, like, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where you collapse after talking nonstop for 86 hours or something to prevent a vote from taking place. Because once the filibuster's done, then it just takes a simple 50% plus one to pass. Now all you have to do is say, we're filibustering it. You take a vote, and if you don't get 60 votes, then by definition, the measure cannot pass. So as a way of bypassing that, they have reconciliation bills that are primarily tied to budgetary concerns. So the spending of money and appropriation of money. And if it doesn't involve money, then it cannot be, if it's not some kind of budget bill, it cannot be included in reconciliation. And the parliamentarian is supposed to be the one that can sort of give the green light or the red light as to whether something can be included. But they are not bound to, no one is bound to obey the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian is not this unelected, oracle that could come in and determine what can be voted and what not. So this is what Trump is saying. Trump has actually gone into Thune and said, fire this idiot parliament, because it's the same one I think that was appointed by Obama. And so this is all part of the administrative state. It's all part of an unaccountable, unelected fourth branch of government that supposedly is there for neutrality. And they're not neutral. They're all libs. They're all left wing. So that's what they are. And we could get rid of them very easily. We don't need them. Richard, do you think Fetterman will get on board with the SAVE Act after Trump's speech? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, if he were a Republican, he would be, because he'll vote with the team. But we'll have to see what he does. I don't know. He said he was all for it. And that would be interesting if he voted for it where, say, Susan Collins voted against it. That would be very, very interesting. Weak and Wimpy, when the Save America Act is passed, how will states like California, Washington change from their mail-in ballot system to an in-person system by the midterm? Very good question. I do not know how California will adapt to a new, like a Save America election culture. I don't know how they will. It's a very good question, but I don't know. They will continue to try to engage in their shenanigans as much as they can because they've basically made fraud legal there. Save America Act is huge in terms of pushing back against that, especially when it comes to voter ID issues. All the blue states will then be required to do produce voter ID, enforce voter ID. Well, Harmeet Dillon has already said that the Justice Department will indeed be enforcing voter ID in key areas in blue states already. That's already going to be happening. And then, just proof of citizenship. That's already happening as well. If you don't turn over your voter rolls so that Homeland Security can compare it to their citizenship database, then the United States Postal Service has been told not to send mail-in ballots. So it's really fascinating stuff. We'll see if some stupid court gets in the middle, but there you go. Texas and LaShock. The communists take over the Democrats reminds me of the scene in The Dark Knight where Alfred is telling Bruce how he squeezed the mob to desperation. And in their desperation, they turned to a man, a Joker, they didn't understand. That's kind of neat. Yeah. Almost like a Lenin figure or a Stalin figure or a Mao figure. And they are very brutal even to their own. Remember, the first thing Stalin did, in many ways, is he wiped out his own inner circle. The guys who helped him get to power, because once he got to power, he saw them as competition, so he wiped them out. Right? It's very similar to what you see in all kinds of mythological evil villains that once they come to power, they start turning on their own. Ironically, Saddam Hussein did that, and in his own sense. So I think you're right. I mean, it's just the natural course of things in the world of darkness. Old school conservative. Thank you, sir. Nice Reagan thumbnail there. Dr. Turley, when's the book available on Audible? Good question. It should be very soon, like today or in the weekend or so. So just keep checking there, but it should be available very soon, if not already. Mitchell Ryan, Dr. Steve, with all of these new revelations coming out about how bad our election system is, how can we convince some of the liberal members of our family that this is a serious matter? It's hard. But the way you tend to do it whenever you're dealing with and we're talking somebody who's not part of the progressive Marxist wing, the way you tend to do it is you bring forward, I had somebody in my notes that I didn't use in my presentation today. I should look that up. But you find someone who's on the left who admits it. You find somebody on the left who admits it. So that's what like James Carville is admitting that Mamdani is a nut. So if you want to convince somebody Mamdani's a nut, so what do you do with James Carville? What do you do with Chris Cuomo? What do you do with these? What do you do with Bill Maher? These are your fellow liberals. They vote with you and they think he's a nut. You don't need to be a Republican to see. And that's what you're trying to do. That's the overall rhetorical strategy. You don't need to be a Republican to recognize there's a problem. So try to find either bipartisan, nonpartisan, or even leftists who are admitting that our voter security, our election security is compromised, is very problematic. I mean, there was a CNN special, like 10 years ago, if I recall, on Smartmatic coming out of Venezuela, that when they had a company in headquarters in I thought in Miami or somewhere in Florida. And they were like, why are we allowing, these were Democrats saying, and this was at a Democrat primary, if I recall, in Chicago. And they were like, why are we allowing Venezuelan electronic voting machines to mechanize our elections? I mean, I don't trust them. Do you trust them? These are voting machines that have been electing Chavez for however many years, and I don't trust them. So, but again, they'll probably say, but turns out they're fine now or something like that. I don't know. So you want to find something a little bit more up to date. Franz, I'd like to see what volume of cargo ships going through Hormuz would be considered back to normal. Good question. Very good question. Let me see. We can ask our trusty AI here. My computers, I got to adjust the hibernation here. It's a great question. What volume of cargo ships going through Hormuz would be considered back to normal? That's a very good question. And that's a good gauge to be able to keep our eye on too, to see. Back to normal traffic through Hormuz means roughly 100 to 140 commercial vessels transiting per day. And that would be carrying about 20 million barrels of oil daily. And again, about 20% of the world's total oil and LNG exports. So pre-war, the Strait averaged about 100 ships per day. Some trackers had figures as high as 130 to 145. During the worst of the conflict, it collapsed to under 10 ships per day. As of late June, it was up to about 60 vessels per day, but still only about 40% of pre-war norms. So the normalization is going to be around 100 and 140. Apparently, you had a backlog of about roughly 500 stranded ships inside the Persian Gulf. And they're the ones who are going to have to get out. And then traffic will eventually become normal. The key for Trump is to either make the Strait irrelevant or to take it entirely away from Iran. So the regime could still be in place, but there's nothing that they'll be able to do, especially around the side of the Strait of Oman, where they're hugging more the Oman side of the Strait as opposed to Iranian side. If Trump can render Iran totally inert in relation to the Strait, then they no longer have any geopolitical leverage whatsoever. That's what he's going after. Benta and Dr. Sue, you aware of the event of Tusi TV being banned in England and Trump allowing his program being aired in the U.S. on YouTube? I saw a little bit of that from afar, and I don't know the details of it, but I do believe I'm forgetting his first name. Is it Mayar? I forget. Tusi, a wonderful fellow. I believe Iranian, Persian, but a British citizen, and I think he's been harassed by European censorship. So funny, they leave the EU, but they engage in precisely the same kind of censorship that you would find on EU's social media censorship. And I saw that he was being harassed, and I did see as well a video, I think this morning, that Trump was bailing him out, or that he was going to be finding some breathing room here in the United States. To which I say, great. I think he does great presentations, very factual, very data-based, great analysis. And how dare British authorities try to shut that down because it may not push the narrative that they want dictated to citizens. Again, the anarcho-tyranny that we're seeing coming out of Britain right now is beyond belief, particularly with the what's left of the Keir Starmer administration. So God bless him, and if it means coming on over here, more power to him. Love to hook up with him sometime. He's phenomenal. MDE 845. Is there a silver bullet to defeat the left in America? Their dystopian hustle seems impossible to fully weed out, which gets under my skin, admittedly. Mine too. Mine too, right? Outside of like just a mass roundup, right? So the good news is it's a big country. And so, yes, they have entrenched themselves into the universities. And then the universities have awakened a monster within a very small minority of highly activist urban, what do you want to call them, urban dwellers. And so we're seeing this sort of radical Marxism, this third worldism, as it's technically called, the hardcore left. We're seeing it now assume power in our cities through, some call it municipal socialism, others call it Islamo-socialism, because it's all part of this third worldism where Islam becomes a very important sacred glue of resistance to the West, which is considered the greatest evil. So this is how you talk about how landlords are basically occupiers at one side of your mouth, and how we need to free Palestine in the other side of our mouth. What holds it all together is this oppressor-oppressed binary, where Western civilization, with the United States and Israel as its proxy, as being the ultimate evils, and their systems as being evil. So anything and everything that has been that has been structured by that system is by definition evil and entails the DNA of that wickedness. And so that's how police are considered to be, like, IDF soldiers, and right, and landlords are occupiers, and the tenants who haven't paid their rent in months are considered to be the victims. And it's just insane. Or squatters are the victims, and so on. The good news is that it's not affecting the vast majority of the country. The vast majority, and this is why James Carville is so freaked out over it taking over the Democrat Party. He thinks it'll destroy it as a national movement, because the vast majority of the country is very conservative. And so when you're talking about breaking us down by county, we are talking 27, 28, 2,900 of our 3,200 counties or so are vote consistently red. So you don't have to, it's not going to hit the vast majority of the country, but it is going to root itself in these urban areas. And then, so we do have a bit of a sort of a Gandalfian "you shall not pass" wall against them. And then I think, just with the massive exodus that we're seeing right now in New York City and in Seattle and in Portland and in Chicago and in Baltimore, I mean, these Marxist experiments are just going to they're going to look like Mogadishu. They're going to make Mogadishu look like Beverly Hills by comparison. And I think that itself is a silver lining to finally rejecting it. The vast majority of people in the country reject Venezuela model. They reject Cuba. They don't want it in their backyard. Only these insane municipal socialists want it in their backyard. They like that. They think that's great. And so let them go there. Let them implode. I know it sucks, but it's great for red states. Let them implode. And I think that's going to be, when all's said and done, the silver bullet. But it's not quick. It's a silver bullet that wounds over time. Adelina, we need to wake up and fight for the life of America, or we'll all be lost to the horrors of the left. May you and the good citizens of America be blessed. Amen. Adelina, I love your name too. Shadow Fox is a horse. Why are people surprised when other countries mess with our elections? The United States, Russian, Soviets have been messing with other countries' elections for decades. For example, Salvador Allende. Yeah, no question about it. But if you get caught, I mean, that's going to be fodder for the nation's own electoral blowback. So that's all. But no, I mean, it's cynicism isn't going to get us anywhere. And perfectly justified cynicism, but cynicism isn't going to get us anywhere. Cynicism is not shared. I mean, it may be in terms of delegitimation, but if we believe in borders, if we believe in electoral integrity, and then evidence is presented where it's been violated here, we don't give a flip if we violate it in Venezuela or wherever in the Soviet Union or whatever. We don't care. I mean, how dare you violate it here? So, I mean, that's just the way it is. It's about power. And if we can push somebody around, no problem. But if they try to push around us, we're going to push back. That's just the way it is. Consistency isn't the issue. Power is the issue. Bert, Dr. Steve, any updates on Alberta elections October? I have not since I last looked, but it wasn't looking good. It did not appear. Now, again, it may be the legacy media pulling a fast one on me, but it did not appear as if it was gaining traction. We were hoping, and again, as we get closer to it, it may. But from measuring it with the Quebec referendum back in '96, if I recall, it seems to be very much behind. But I may be wrong on that. That's all. We'll have to see. Cody, oil should be priced based on its availability here in the United States, not worldwide. No reason for us to suffer based on international turmoil. We have plenty of our own oil and don't need international help. No, I'm with you. Yeah, but I mean, you'd have to completely restructure the market. Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to do that. So again, I tend to be descriptive rather than prescriptive in that sense. So. Brian, my good friend, gas up 50 cents. It's a little high. And diesel's up $1 per gallon. How do you see that affecting the midterms? You ask the same question every time, my friend, every single time. Again, we'll have to see. I'm not seeing any data yet that it is dramatically affecting the Republicans' chances. I think largely because the Democrats are sinking themselves and they look so incredibly insane. And a lot of people are like, yeah, well, I may not like what the Republicans are giving me, but at least they're not trying to kill me. IDF. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are all doing well. Thank you very much. Franz Paul, Dr. Steve, how does the U.S. military controlling Hormuz impact Lloyd's of London influence on maritime commerce? Don't know. I'd have to look at that. Perhaps we can get our Promethean updates, ladies, to help us out with that. I think the idea of it is that it takes away, I mean, at the most basic level, it takes away any inhibition to underwrite the super tankers. But could it be that he's going to turn around and start charging Lloyd's of London? Are they going to be forced to pay some of this via the super tankers, or is the United States going to start underwriting the super tankers? That's all going to have to play out. It's a good question. Lennox, does anyone who was indoctrinated in university ever graduate and come back to the center or even go right? Yes. Yeah, big time, actually. So what we find in studies is so people tend to go to the left in the university. There's no way around it because that's the air they breathe. Again, it's one of the areas I would like to see Trump resolve, because I think if you don't resolve the problems on left-wing campuses, we're going to be right back in this insane situation we're in 20 years, in a matter of generation. That said, we have studies that find that whether we went to university or not, we generally get 1% more conservative with every year we age after the age of 26, I believe. So so wherever you are at 18, by the time you're 22, you tend to be more left wing, especially if you go to the universities. And then after you graduate and you start getting a job and you start paying taxes and you start seeing all these people trying to be parasites off your taxes, inevitably, and then you start a family, and families by their nature generally conservative. Every year past that point, 24, 26, you get 1% more conservative. I don't know what happened to Bernie Sanders, but ironically, Bernie Sanders is more conservative than Mamdani. He's not as nutty as some of these leftists. So there you go. So yes, there is evidence that they do tend to go to it. That's the problem where you say, well, all you have to do is just wait for all these Gen Zers to become the majority, and then because they're mostly left, which is not true anymore, but because they're mostly left, the whole of our voting, the whole Overton window is going to swing to the left. That doesn't work, because when they become 30, 40, 50, they are demonstrably not of the same political persuasion as they were when they were 22. And there you go, gang. All right. I love you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Again, if anything breaks, I'm your back porch professor over the weekend. So stay in tune with the channel. Don't forget your CivCons book. You're going to love it. This is going to blow your mind. This is my life's work in a matter of 200 some odd pages. You're going to love it. Theopolitics, technopolitics, astropolitics. It's the wave of the future, and you'll be on the cutting edge of it. Love you guys. God bless.